Has a man just been given the highest honour in world sport, an Olympic gold medal, for punching women in the face in boxing? It sounds like a crazy question. The recent firestorm of controversy and conflicting information has made it hard for ordinary folks like you and me to tell, but today I'm going to get to the bottom of it once and for all. G'day, I'm Martyn Iles and this is Living in Babylon. It all began when Angela Carini of Italy conceded defeat against Imane Khelif of Algeria after just 2 punches and 46 seconds, amidst allegations that Khelif is genetically male. Carini claims she had never felt such powerful blows in the ring before, which could make sense if the claims are true, because men hit 162% harder on average than women in boxing. But ever since, everything has descended into confusion and acrimony, and the International Olympic Committee has refused to act against either Khelif or the other athlete facing similar allegations, Lin Yuting of Taiwan. Indeed, the IOC has vigorously defended them both. Now, one of the results of the chaos is this. We are left with the sense that this question of biological sex is impossibly complex, deeply nuanced, beset by hard cases, and ultimately inscrutable. So, it is morally wrong, we are told, to enforce male and female categories, and people like Khelif and Lin are the true victims of this narrow-minded effort to do so. IOC spokesman Mark Adams promotes this confusion narrative. He said, and this is somewhat unbelievable actually, but he's actually said this, quote, "This is a minefield and we want a simple, black and white explanation of how we can determine this," that is like the biological sex of the athletes, and he continues, "That explanation does not exist, neither in the scientific world nor anywhere else." So we're also confused. Well, there are answers because there is truth, so it's time to do some unconfusing. First of all, some history. A few years ago, the International Boxing Association, or IBA, started requiring chromosome testing for female athletes to confirm their sex. This is nothing new, and that's important to note. Many other world sporting bodies do this, and the Olympics used to do it also, and I'll talk about more on that later. But the IBA conducted tests on Khelif and Lin, and the athletes failed their tests. Neither athlete completed the appeal process, thus accepting the outcome and, at least at that time, accepting disqualification from women's boxing events. Now, it was back on the 25th of March 2023 that the IBA seems to have first confirmed that Khelif has XY chromosomes. Also, just last week, it was the current European Vice President of World Boxing, who is no longer with the IBA. He said, quote, "The problem was not with the level of Khelif's testosterone, because that can be adjusted nowadays, but with the result of the gender test, which clearly revealed that the Algerian boxer is biologically male." Meanwhile, sports journalist Alan Abrahamson has reported that the IBA sent the genetic test results of both Khelif and Lin to the International Olympic Committee way back on the 5th of June 2023, more than a year ago, and he reports that he has seen a copy of the correspondence in question and a copy of the genetic tests. Now, I add these to the recent many public comments by the IBA because they predate the current controversy. They predate what some people are calling, different agendas, and also from sources that are no longer in the IBA. So why would the IOC permit 2 genetic males into a competition that involves punching women in the face? Well, they dissociated from the IBA due to governance concerns. It's ultimately quite political, but there was some corruption happening, it seems. And so as a result, the IOC has moved in to govern the sport of boxing for Olympic purposes. And so they're now applying IOC standards. And these standards are not based on biology, unlike the IBA's. And for that matter, unlike the largest governing bodies in world sport, like World Swimming, World Athletics, World Cycling, and World Rugby. For clarity on what the IOC actually does, we turn again to spokesman Mark Adams, and he says, quote, "For the time being, we have to go with the passport." So, it's based on the athlete's passport, nothing more. Now, the IOC used to do genetic testing for female athletes. They did so for many decades because ever since, it turns out, this is predictable, I guess, but it turns out that ever since the advent of women's events in the Olympics, some men have tried to enroll as women. In 1996, the blood samples taken as part of the testing regime for Atlanta revealed that 1 in 423 athletes claiming to be female were actually male. And yet, just 3 years later, in 1999, genetic testing was abandoned by the IOC. They said it was costly and it made female athletes uncomfortable. But their own survey during the Atlanta Olympics revealed that 82% of female athletes supported the continuation of sex testing, and 94% said they felt no anxiety from the procedure. Nonetheless, they ignored the survey because it didn't go their way, and the way had been paved for a policy change in 2003. The IOC decided that post-op male-to-female transgender athletes could compete in the women's competitions. This, despite the fact that such surgeries do not undo the competitive advantages of male puberty, which are very substantial. Then you get 3 Canadian transgender athletes who are biological males starting to play a role in IOC policy formulation. Most notably, someone who calls themselves Joanna Harper, a biological male identifying as a female long-distance runner, was given a position on the IOC Medical Commission. So you can see the downward spiral is on. By 2015, the IOC has relaxed its policy even further, and it became a new rule that gender reassignment was not even necessary at all. Rather, a male athlete simply had to keep their testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per litre for 1 year, and they could compete as a woman. Even though that's a testosterone level which is many times higher than any biologically female athlete. They max out a little over 2 nanomoles per litre. This brings us up to 2021, when the IOC released its framework on fairness, inclusion, and non-discrimination, which sounds foreboding for these things. It never is really about much of that. But it was that document was quite radical, including requirements that any genetic males enrolled in female events must be called females as a matter of policy. But at the same time, the IOC relinquished its role in gender testing, or lack thereof, that was pushed back onto the various global sporting bodies in each discipline. Many of these bodies have banned biological males from competition, and I mentioned 4 massive ones earlier, like World Swimming, World Athletics, World Rugby, World Cycling, obviously the IBA as well. But the IOC still holds to its own confusion, and that is why, without the IBA, when the IOC becomes the watchdog, we get this whole present debacle. A simple passport designation is enough, regardless of genetics, regardless of testosterone, regardless of anatomy. But what is the biology of this situation? Well, the IOC has implied very strongly that these are cases of DSDs, or differences of sexual development. Sometimes DSDs are called intersex cases. One incident which revealed this was a recent statement by the IOC president, where he actually claimed they were not DSD cases. But shortly afterwards, the IOC issued an official retraction and a correction. They said that instead they would like to say that these are not transgender cases, implying therefore that they are either DSD or nothing. So we have XY chromosome individuals, and either that's the end of the story, or they are individuals with a DSD of some kind. Helpfully, it turns out there's really only one DSD which really could make sense in light of what we know. Because first of all, this is a male to female issue. It's about the possibility of males trying to identify or being included in female sports, not the other way around. So that does narrow it down in terms of possibilities. Second, they have XY chromosomes, and that's pretty clear now. So it's not a chromosome issue, and that narrows it down again. So third, take a quick look at the athletes in question and check the other photos that are out there of them, and it reveals that they have masculine physiques. So they have passed through puberty. So it's not Swyer syndrome, as speculated by some media outlets. Now it's really narrowed it down. Therefore, the remaining serious contender is something known as 5-alpha reductase deficiency. This means that some of the things testosterone is supposed to do to the male body do not happen due to an enzyme deficiency. But let's compare a typical male and a male with 5-alpha reductase deficiency. And this is the important thing, right? What's the difference? Let's say they have this 5-ARD thing. What's the difference? Well, not that many, it turns out, for sporting purposes. First of all, they both have XY chromosomes, the man and the 5-ARD man. Both have testes, which produce sperm. Both have androgenic rather than estrogenic endocrine systems. Both have male levels of testosterone. Both pass through male puberty. Both have male primary and secondary sex characteristics. And so you're probably sitting there thinking, well, what's the difference? Well, the differences are these. 1, external genitalia can vary, and this could lead to a mistaken gender designation at birth. Thus, sex on their birth certificate or their passport can also vary, and that's significant for the IOC's chosen method of deciding what is a woman, right? Passport. And third, a person's chosen gender identity can vary, and that's evident. Therefore, in every substantive way that matters to sport, it really does appear that these individuals are male. We might well say to the IOC, if this is the case, then what is so complex about it? To the people peddling this storm of confusion and stuff, what's so complex? What's so nuanced? It is simple. It is confusion and deception that has made it complex, not truth. These are male individuals. But the IOC is left to look at passports because of 25 years of gender activism which have left them unable to see the obvious. Result? Men are punching women in the face for the world's most prestigious sporting awards. Now, I need to add this footnote because somebody will contend with me. Some of the usual suspects have gone so far as to claim that this whole thing is a Russian disinformation campaign. But I want to just point something out. There's a few reasons I could go into, but there's just an obvious surface level consideration here that shows that this is self-evidently not a good enough theory. Consider, if you were subject to a claim that you were a man and it was threatening your qualification for your sport, and you had a piece of paper, just a handy piece of paper, which is an official genetic test result clearly showing that you're not a man, you're a woman, you could simply produce it. And it's all over. And your sporting career is secure. In fact, they could have secured their sporting career a year ago when it looked like it was all over by doing the same thing. So finally, what are my reflections on all of this? Well, the reason this situation has been a cause of such insufferable frustration for some is because we all know two things. First, men are a lot stronger than women. As noted, in boxing, men punch over 160% harder. In more or less all sports, the advantages are similar. Go on YouTube and search for a mixed relay track event from a previous Olympics. Your jaw will drop at the speed difference between the men and the women when they're running at the same time. Even Serena and Venus Williams were thrashed by 203rd ranked male player Carsten Brash in Melbourne Park in 1998. He beat them 6-1 and 6-2 in back-to-back sets. They had confidently asserted they could beat him or any man ranked below the top 200, and they were very wrong. Now, we have these boxers, Lin and Khelif, in the Olympic finals. Of course they are. It is a raw fact of life that women are made with different strengths compared with men, not physical strength. Second, we just know intuitively that men are made to use their strength for women, not against them. What we see is a perversion of masculinity and an abuse of femininity that runs exactly opposite to what is good and right. It therefore riles one up from deep inside if they have a moral compass. 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 7 has really sage and frankly clear, evident advice that's been for some reason controversial in recent years, but all of a sudden looks awfully smart. It says, "Show honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life." Of course, the Olympic opening ceremony mocked Christianity and the Bible, so it's no surprise they show little regard for principles like this, which are good and true. A possible third reason is simply the complex of deception and doublespeak that has been deployed to confuse the issue. Based on what we know, it is very evident that there are males, people with XY chromosomes, male testosterone, and the advantages of male puberty, punching women in the face for the world's top sporting honour, an Olympic gold medal. Even saying that makes your skin crawl. And so it should. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise.